Now it is hello and welcome everyone. This is CHW Khatti, and I ask my good friend Mr. Samantrai to start the proceedings of this evening to Mr. Deepak.
Thank you, Sudhanshu. It's again very nice to be here after a long gap, comparatively a long gap. The last Khatti was hosted by you, of course, and the talk was delivered by Dr. Kaniska Das on Odissi, and as you know, Cradle of Odissi Cuttack. That was a wonderful talk, I must say, because after the session was over, I received a lot of inquiries. Dr. Das also received a lot of mail and inquiries, and a lot of people saw it on YouTube live streaming plus the recordings. So it did have a wonderful reception. Today we are having this meet slightly delayed because of the puja vacation. You know, puja intervened, though this time the celebrations were of a low-key nature, but still it was there. So we are here, and I'm sure we are going to have a fantastic session because Dr. Mrinal Chatterjee. Yes, Dr. Mrinal Chatterjee is a very well-known personality of the state and outside also. A lot of his students are there. Wherever he goes, he is literally mocked by his students. He is a very popular teacher, and I have seen for myself how loved he is by his students. And luckily for me, I know Dr. Chatterjee since his student days. He started his association with All India Radio at that point of time. And he's one of those rare media academicians, I must say, who has worked in radio or worked for radio. Then in print media, he was with Samad for 15 years. Then he joined the academics. And after joining the academics, he was very active both in radio and television. He was participating in a number of television programs of Doordarshan, and he was also hosting a science show for ETV, which was extremely popular. And he is an author who is incessantly working on something. I am really envious of that trait of him because I find it very difficult to focus on anything and do it for some time and do it in a consistent manner. But he has been into fiction, he has been into non-fiction, and right now he has produced, I think during the past 5 years, he must have produced at least half a dozen books on mass communication and related subjects. That is his forte. So you see, he is always active, and he's one of our most well-known columnists. And interestingly enough, very few people write humorous articles, lighter-vein articles, and he excels at that. And that is again one thing which I really admire about him. He is very good at cracking humor, and if you spend many hours with him, you can do that absolutely without any strain or stress, and you will really like it. Rather, on the other hand, you will enjoy talking to him. He is a very good conversationalist, and he gives you a lot of examples. He remembers a lot of things. He has got a fantastic memory. So he has got all the qualities of a good teacher, good speaker, and a good writer. So we are really lucky. Cuttack Jokes is very lucky to have him today. And he is going to talk about Odia newspapers and how it all started in Cuttack. And I'm not going into it because it is he's dominant today. He'll be talking about it. But just I would like to add one thing. He has done a book on history of journalism in Odisha, a first of its kind. Prior to that, there was absolutely no published book or publication of worth mentioning publication in this field or in this arena. So it is a tremendous contribution of him that now we have a book, and that book is available in both Odia and English editions. And the other day, while we are discussing, he was telling that I'm going to update it soon because it's almost 7 years back it was published. So he's going to update that also. So that's a wonderful contribution of him to journalism, I will say. Why journalism in Odisha and also in India? Because the outsiders also should know what happened in Odisha and how it happened and who were behind the scenes. So I think without any further delay, I'd like to request him to start the session. Let's hope our friends will keep on joining. And if they miss it here, they can make up for it by listening to our recordings later on. So thank you. Over to Dr. Chatterjee.
Thank you. Thank you. I must say I'm grateful to this organization, which is doing a wonderful job in familiarizing people with the rich heritage of Cuttack. Today, I'm going to deliberate, and I'm going to keep with the spirit of Khati. Khati, like Adda, we have a Bengali word called Adda. Khati is almost like Adda, where you can have serious discourses, but in a lighter mode. Adda or Khati is never a very serious kind of discourse. So coming to the subject proper. Today, the subject on which I'll deliberate for about 35 minutes, and I'll leave about 10-15 minutes so that we can discuss.
Mr. Chatterjee,
we can
excuse
look
me.
at the
Chatterjee,
also.
Mr. Chatterjee, have you?
Yes, please.
Have you switched off your video? Have you switched off your video?
No.
Yeah, your
No,
video.
it's on.
No, it's
On.
the network bandwidth is low, is saying.
Probably because I'm doing it on. Yes.
Everyone
Yes,
wants.
I guess so. Because I'm doing it on mobile.
We are not able to see you. So, Deepak, are you able to see?
No. I'm seeing just his picture on the screen, but
Can you just allow me one?
okay, you can continue, Mrinal.
Okay, continue.
Okay, if there is some problem with video, please continue.
My net connection in PC has come back. Just allow me once on PC.
It's okay. You
You better switch on PC.
take your time. Take your time.
Take your time. People else slowly, our strength, the audience strength is increasing.
Has just resumed. It has just. I have just reconnected to that.
Oh, dear.
I'm trying to do that.
Yes, now visible.
Yeah, now it's visible.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Carry on, please.
Thank you. I'll just switch it off.
There is some audio problem. This echo problem. Yes, you turn off or switch, silence the mobile.
That's what I'm saying.
Then only we can all enjoy what you speak. Not audible, not audible. Yes, I'm just, wait. I'm just, yes, unmute, please. Unmute, please. Unmute, please.
Right now?
Yes.
Well, now maybe we can look at each other and
Yes.
so newspapers and Cuttack. That is the subject on which I'm supposed to say, but I'll broaden that scope of my deliberation. I'll make it media. Why only newspapers? Like Kolkata is the cradle of journalism in India, Cuttack happens to be the place where journalism, and why only journalism? Lot more things when it comes to communication, when it comes to mass communication, emerged from Cuttack. And I'll take you back to the time when the first printing press started in Cuttack. And it all started with the arrival of printing press. Cuttack has been the capital of the state of Odisha from 10th century till 1948, continuously. But of course, the geographical spread of Odisha ebbed and there was even tide in that. But then Cuttack was an important place so far power structure is concerned, till 1948, when the capital was shifted to Bhubaneswar. Now that will bring us into another area. Do mass media has something to do with power structure or the power center for survival and growth? That's a tricky question to which we will come probably towards the end of our deliberation. But to begin with, it all started, as I told you, with printing press coming to Cuttack. And it was the Christian missionaries who brought these printing press to Cuttack, mission press, it was known as. And like Gutenberg's printing machine, way back in 1455, democratized knowledge, changed the way people used to engage with knowledge. The same thing happened with Mission Press's printing press in Cuttack. It kind of started to democratize knowledge. And gradually, it dawned on initially the intelligentsia of Odisha that knowledge could be democratized, that they have a say in the governance, they have a say in society. It also impacted the society in another way. The consciousness about our language, the pride that we should have in our language, it also dawned. And that led to the agitation of, I shouldn't say agitation, that led to the very justified demand to amalgamate Odia speaking areas, which were part of other states, to bring them together and to form a separate Odisha province, which happened in 1936. The first newspaper, if we can call it a newspaper, was Kujivara Patra. It was in 1769 that a Mathadish of Kujivara Matha, is near Chaudhar. He started a newspaper in a very rudimentary state. It was handwritten and it used to be read out very loudly in bazaars and wherever people congregated. And it, besides religious texts and sermons and this and that, it also used to have some information. So this could be called as the first attempt to disseminate news to public. Kujivarapatra in 1769. Printing press hadn't come by then. Printing press came later. And the printing press that came to Cuttack, like it did to many other places, including the first printing press in India, which landed accidentally in Goa. It was to go to some country in Africa. It accidentally landed in Goa. And then it started printing religious texts. In many places, the missionaries brought printing press to print religious texts. So was the case in Cuttack as well. But gradually, besides the religious texts, they started printing some other things as well. The second printing press played a very important role in bringing out the newspaper. It was Cuttack printing press, right? And we will come back to that. Now, the second newspaper, I shouldn't say second, in fact, I say the first proper newspaper to have born in Odisha was Utkal Deepika, 1866. This was the year when you will appreciate Nanka Durvikya happened, which killed over 10 lakh people in Odisha and in neighboring places. Nanka Durvikya. It was 1866, August 4th, when Gaurishankar Rai published the first weekly Odia newspaper, Utkal Deepika. Before him, there were several publications. So, for example, Gyanaruna in 1849, Prabodh Chandrika in 1856. All these were published by Mission Press. Reverend Lacey was the editor of Gyanaruna. It stopped. Prabodh Chandrika continued for 3 years. Who was the editor of Prabodh Chandrika? We do not know. Probably Lacey. These newspapers, the primary objective was to propagate Christianity. But with that, some news was also there in these newspapers, in these publications. However, after Mission Press was established in 1837, it was in 1864, 27 years, almost 3 decades after, the second press was established by some people, including Gaurishankar Rai and others. That was the named as Cuttack Printing Company. And third printing press came in 1868, Utkal Printing Company, and it was brought to Odisha by Fakirman Senapati in Baleshwar. Now, coming to Utkal Deepika, it was a very modern newspaper for its time. If you look at Utkal Deepika, Dr. Pradeep Mahapatra did his PhD on Utkal Deepika, and he has published a book on Utkal Deepika. If you see the subjects that Utkal Deepika had covered in about 70 years of lifespan, it was modern. It was, very modern for the time that it was published. After Utkal Deepika, it talked about society, it talked about people's problem, it tried to be an interface between public and the administration. It tried to talk about the famine and people's problems during this famine. It also talked about literature. It also talked about culture. It also talked about languages. So it was a modern newspaper in all sense of the term. From 1866 to 1936, for 70 years, it continued its publication. After Utkal Deepika, it started, but it started very slowly. Like it happened in India also. Shiki's Bengal Gazette was the first newspaper in 1780. Then the second, it took almost 6-8 months for the second newspaper to come up. The first regional language newspaper in India was published in 1818, almost 38 years later. So it was initially, it was very slow. Utkal Hitaishini, Utkal Samaj of Cuttack, they published weekly Utkal Hitaishini in 1869. The editor was Kalipada Banerjee. However, this newspaper, this weekly, was more focused towards literature, culture, than people's problems and stuff like that. In 1887, January 21st, from Cuttack, another newspaper was published called Nabo Sambad. Nabo Sambad, New Sambad. But financial problem, due to financial problem, this paper in 1888, January 4th, was merged with another newspaper called Odia. I have the pictures also. If you allow me to show the pictures, probably it will be interesting for the participants of this discussion to see. Just allow me 1 minute so that I can show you the pictures.
Yes, please do so.
I have a presentation here. So, can you see this now? Newspapers in Cuttack?
Yes, yes,
Right.
you can see.
So, this is, can you see this cover of a book called Nutan Niyama?
Yes.
Right. These were the early publications by Mission Press. And look at the font, Odia font. This was the early Odia font. Now, Cuttack printing. So, this point I was discussing, that print culture came to shape and consolidate a language-based identity, which eventually led to the formation of Odisha as a separate province in 1936. Now, this is Utkal Deepika's masthead, the kind of font that was used for this newspaper. And the mustached person is Gaur Shankar Rai. You will find a statue, a large statue of Gaur Shankar Rai in Cuttack. This is the newspaper I was talking about, Odia O Navasambad. It happened when Navasambad was merged into Odia. Navasambad was published in Cuttack, and then it was merged into with Odia sometime in 1888. After that, several magazines and newspapers, they were published. Utkal Putra was published by Parimohan Acharya. Utkal Putra played an important role in documenting whatever had been published earlier. That was one role that Utkal Putra played very effectively. By this time, at the end of 19th century, in the last 3 decades, we find printing presses being established in different parts of Odisha. This is another important point which is very unique to Odisha. In Odisha, unlike in other states, newspapers were published from very many places. If you look at Odisha, from Cuttack to Baleshwar to Sambalpur to Berhampur to places like Devgarh, Puri, Satyavadi, I mean, many places. In other states, there were few publishing centers. But Odisha is a very, very interesting point that Odisha had more publishing centers than probably many of the other states. Now, coming back. Cuttack was the main publishing center. And from here, many newspapers and many magazines, periodicals, niche periodicals, periodicals for particular purposes, they were published. Like, say, for example, in 1878, Utkal Madhupa. Many people say that this is the first literary magazine, Utkal Madhupa. The first literary magazine. Many people say that, but there are opposing views as well among the academia. It was launched in 1878 under the editorship of Gopal Chandra Datta as the first editor. Krishna Chandra Patnaik took over the next year. It featured modern theme-based poetry, novels, scientific and thought-provoking essays under Krishna Chandra Patnaik's editorship. Discussions, book reviews. Ramashankar Ray wrote extensively, but it closed down due to lack of readership, financial problem. But one other thing happened with Utkal Madhupa. It is the conflict between the Puritans and the modernists over what constitute obscene. How do you use language? Do we use language only in a classical way, or do we use language as people talk in the bazaar? So like Indradhanu and Bijuli, there was a conflict. Madhupa also picked up conflict with several newspapers, including Utkal Deepika. And there are researchers who say that it was Utkal Deepika's dominance, or probably other way also, I mean, which led to the closure of Utkal Madhupa. I'm not very sure, but this is what many researchers do say. There were magazines like Shiksha Bandhu. Shiksha Bandhu, it was exclusively for teachers. Please appreciate that during that time, there has to be some attempt to popularize, to take Odia language to masses. Not many textbooks were available, which led to literatures like Fakirman Senapati, Radhanath Rai to write textbooks. And Radhanath Rai was also involved with this magazine, Shiksha Bandhu. It was exclusively for teachers. And it talked about how do you teach, what should be the textbook, this and that. That was the subject on which it concentrated on. Jogesh Chandra Jaina was the editor. Madhusudan Rao was the founder. This was a monthly magazine. And it realized that this magazine must help school teachers to be effective in their profession. So you'll appreciate that there were magazines exclusively for the spread and growth of school education. That's very interesting. It was also published from Cuttack Printing Company. In fact, Cuttack Printing Company played a very important role in the early growth of Odia literature, Odia not only literature in the sense of kebala sahitya, the classical literature, no, not that sense. The reading material in several domains, several knowledge areas. There were many such magazines like 1980 Kohinoor, 1983 Sebok, Sanskara, 1985 Pradeep, 1885 Pradeep, 1886 Shiksha Bandhu, 1887 Samyavadi, 1889 Samalochana. But unfortunately, the mortality rate of these magazines were also very high. It has always been so. I mean, publications all over the country, and especially in Odisha, was more a product of passion than of sound financial and managerial judgment. Unlike Mumbai Na Samachar, which was the first newspaper in Gujarati, which is still surviving. It just completed its 200 years. From the beginning, they looked after the business side also. But they're supposed to be, they are Parsis and Gujaratis. But in Odisha, like in Bengal, like in other states, the mortality rate was very high. And so, now in this time, Gopal Chandra Praharaj edited Satya Samachar, Divya Prasanna Rai Chaudhary edited Navya Bharat. These were also published from Cuttack. In 1922, there was another weekly which was published from Cuttack, is Swaraj. In 1932, it became a daily. Now let's come to one very important newspaper of Cuttack today, which was not born in Cuttack. I find myself quite similar to this situation. I was born in West Bengal, but more now an Odia. So like Samaj was not born in Cuttack. Samaj was born in Sakhi Gopal in 1919, October 4. That was the Vijayadashmi day. This is another interesting. When you read history of journalism, you find a lot of interesting facts. October 4th was the day when Vijayadashmi, Samaj was published. October 4th, 1984, Sambad was published. 2nd October, Samay was published. So October 4, October, because it's Puja month, many newspapers and publications will have their first publication in October. You'll find that. Now, coming back. So it started from Sakhi Gopal, and it was a weekly. Then it was taken to Puri in 1925, January 3rd. And then it was published in Pathuriya Sahi in Puri. Then it came to Cuttack in 1927, July 28th. The publication started in Cuttack. And from then on, it grew roots in Cuttack. And now it has become almost synonymous with our Kutki identity, or in a larger sense, Udi identity. What Anandabajar Patrika is for Bengali, what Hindu is for Madrasi, Samaj is for Odia. We do not say new Khabar Kagaz Stand, we say Samaj Stand. That was the situation. Now, in 1930, April 6th, it turned daily. Another important newspaper, again, it was first published outside Cuttack, and then it came to Cuttack and established its roots in Cuttack and played a very important role in the cultural side of Cuttack. It's Prajatantra. Prajatantra was published in 1923 in Cuttack, but then shifted to Baleshwar for quite long, and then it stopped because there were operation, there was British administration, they didn't want to publish it, so it stopped, and then again it came back to Cuttack, and it started publishing from Cuttack from August 1947. 1930 from Cuttack, another newspaper started. It's called Deshakotha. In 1937, it became a daily. Swarajya, 1930, Rajkrishna Bose was the editor. So pre-independence, these were the major newspapers. Post-independence, we have Mathrubhumi, we have Kalinga. Mathrubhumi was published in 1947 as a weekly newspaper. The editor and publisher was Balakrishna Kora. Then it was published twice a week. And in 1951, just before the elections, it turned daily. In 1960s and 70s, Mathrubhumi became very popular. In fact, at one point of time, it was very, very popular across the state. But then probably management problems, probably labor problems, then it grew out of favor of people by 80s. Kalinga was another paper which was published by Biju Patnaik from Cuttack in 1960. Again, 1960, October 2. I was telling you, October is the month when we have maximum number of newspapers published. So it was published in October 2nd, Kalinga. The first editor was Manmohan Mishra, then Surendra Mahanti of Nilashaila fame. He also became the chief editor of Sambad, editor, then chief editor of Sambad. So he was the editor of Kalinga. But 1971, it stopped. Till 1975, almost, Cuttack was the main publishing hub. But before that, I'll also try to tell you about other publications. Cuttack was not only the hub of newspapers, it was also the hub of literary magazines, entertainment magazines, sports magazines, science magazines, and so on and so forth. If we talk about literary magazines, it was in 1934 that monthly literary magazine Navbharat was started. Pandit Nilakantha Das started this. I guess I have. This was Prajatantra. I'll come to Chitrapuri later. In Navbharat, besides literature, politics also formed part of its content. Navbharat in 1942 was also published for some time as a daily, but after Second World War ended, it stopped. Pandit Nilakantha Das published another weekly from Cuttack. It's called Lokomata in 1935. And it acted as the mouthpiece of Congress and added the freedom struggle. Cartoons, I'm very interested in cartoons. I have done quite some research on cartoons in Indian cartooning. The cartoons, mostly in Odia newspapers, were used. The beginning was made in Cuttack. In 1938, March 12, Nyakhunta was published. So this newspaper, but it was first published in Berhampur, Nyakhunta, and then it came to Cuttack. And again, as it happened with Samaj, as it happened with other newspapers, it grew roots in Cuttack. By 1950, Samaj and Prajatantra also had cartoons, and there were several cartoonists in Cuttack and Angul-based Divakar Mishra also used to draw cartoons for them. Cuttack has been a hub of entertainment industry, theatre, cinema. But the first three news magazines, entertainment magazines, cinema, film magazines were not published from Cuttack. It was the fourth Odia film magazine which was published in Cuttack. It was called Chitrapuri in 1965. This is the cover. This was not the cover of the first publication, subsequently. In 68, Parikshit Jena published Bani Chitra. 76, Adiganta Raut published Chalachitra Jagata. 1966, again, Randhir Das, Jivan Ranga. It published for quite some time. But gradually, with films, literature also formed a large part of its content. Chitra Pori, again, Vinod Nanda, Siddhartha Das, CHW. In 80s, from Odisha, different parts of Odisha, almost 24 plus film magazines used to be published, majority from Cuttack. Another thing, Prajatantra had a particular page. Earlier, it used to be named as Chhaya Maya, and then Rupa Rasa Chanda, that was the name of the page. And it played a very important role in promoting culture, art, cinema, theatre, etc. That domain. It played a very important role. Now, if we look at other language newspapers besides Odia, again, we find Cuttack taking the lead. In 1869, Cuttack Argus, January 1869, Cuttack Argus was the first English publication from Odisha. And then 1869, February 2nd, Cuttack Star, 1869, November 7th, Cuttack Standard, 1871, March, Cuttack Chronicles, but many of them died early. In 1905, Kirat Chandra Rai Chaudhary, he published Star of Utkal. This is an important newspaper because like Utkal Deepika, which was much advanced to its time, Star of Utkal also was much advanced for its time. It was published from, again, Cuttack Mission Press. Time and again, we are coming back to Cuttack Mission Press. And I'll try to highlight the role that Cuttack Mission Press played in the development of media. In 1912, Star of Utkal became bilingual, bi-weekly. Another important thing about Star of Utkal is it used to contain articles of many renowned persons, including that of Rabindranath Tagore, Sarojini Naidu, Madhusudan Das, and others. It was a nationalist paper, and it was fined about 2,000 rupees. At that time, 2,000 rupees was a huge amount because it wrote against the government, and the editor refused to pay that fine. It closed, the newspaper closed. It again resumed its publication, but after Kirat Chandra Rai Chaudhary died, Star of Utkal also ceased publication in 1916. In 1924, again it was resumed, but in 1930 it's closed and it was never resumed again. In 1910, The Odia, there was a weekly magazine called The Odia. Rajasundar Das was its editor. 1948, April 1st, Prajatantra group came up with the Eastern Times. Indigenous, good quality English daily. Janaki Vallabh Patnaik was the editor of Eastern Times from 1952 to 1966. So, in 65, again, R.P. Sastry started a newspaper called the Odisha Times. It was a bilingual newspaper, English and Odia. And it was taken to Bhubaneswar in mid-80s. As I was telling you in the beginning, that Cuttack was not only the hub of publication. Cuttack is a place where the first radio station came up in Odisha. It was in 1948, January 28th to be precise. It came up. When India became independent in 1947, there were just 6 radio stations in India. Before that, there were 11. Pakistan took 3, India took 6, and other remained with the princely states. That was the situation of radio stations. In 48 is a very important year so far the development of radio is concerned, because on 48, several radio stations started. Patna started in 48, Radio Kashmir started in 48, so did some other radio stations. Cuttack also started in 48, January. And Akashvani Cuttack played a very important role in the development of modern music, modern plays in Odisha, especially Odissi, especially Loko Natya. It played a unique role in Odisha. Television, if we talk about television in 1975, this is the cover of Bani Chitra. Radio, this is the new building of Akashvani. This is not the first building of Akashvani. Akashvani started functioning initially from Madhupur Koti. This was the newly built building. Site, in fact, television came to India in 1959, September 15th. Right. But it expanded with site experiment, satellite instructional television, 1975. And in Odisha also, there were several districts which were taken into this site experiment. And the entire thing was conducted, the programming, this and that was conducted from Cuttack. In 1985, a transmitter was set up. 87, the started television program in Cuttack. And I remember I was a newsreader of TV, Doordarshan, and we used to go to that building in Tulsipur. Deepak Bhai must be remembering that building, old looking building in Tulsipur. I did my first radio bulletin. I read my first television bulletin there. And then it shifted to Bhubaneswar. Interestingly, e-paper. Now I'm coming to the modern era. Now, e-paper. The first e-paper was introduced by Samaj in 2006. Although 1995, the first web newspaper was published in India by Hindu, but in Odisha, the first e-paper was launched by Samaj. News agency, if we talk about, the initial offices were in Cuttack. In 1938, way back, Associated Press of India had presence. They started an office. In 1940, it started full-fledged. UNI also had an office, and then gradually it was shifted. Photojournalism. Here again, Cuttack had played a very important role because there were not many newspapers which could afford printing of photographs except Samaj and Prajatantra and others. If we talk about financial news, if you talk about sports news, because the newspapers started in Cuttack, the rudimentary elements of all these niche area journalism also started from Cuttack. So with that, and let me end with mention of the stalwarts who served these newspapers as editors and publishers. Gauri Shankar Rai I had mentioned. Pandit Nilamani Vidyaratna was one who you can consider him as the first professional journalist in terms of he had no other source of livelihood, only journalism. So born in 1867, he was editor of Sambalpur Hitaisini, a very important newspaper, which is published initially from Devgarh. Prajabandhu, he was for some time editor of Utkal Deepika also. Balakrishna Kaura, 1887 born in Salepur. 1937, he established Saraswat Press, which published Matrubhumi. Radhanath Rath, 1897, he was born and he served Samaj as editor for well over 4 decades. Vichitrananda Kaura, Balakrishna Kaura's son, he also steered Matrubhumi to glory. Now I'll end with what is the situation now and what Cuttack can look forward to. And that brings me to the initial point with which I started. The capital shifted to Bhubaneswar. Bhubaneswar became the power center. And if we look at the history from 75 onwards, more newspapers were published from Bhubaneswar. Television stations shifted to Bhubaneswar. Film industry, although the human resource mostly were drawn from Cuttack, but gradually the industry shifted towards Bhubaneswar. Right? Private television channels look at their positions and where they are located and where do they draw their human resource from. Human resource mostly from Cuttack, but they are located in Bhubaneswar. Right? Why? Now I think, power structure, you need what? You need to position yourself closer to the power structure, probably to survive. You need to get advertisement, and that can only happen where the money is and where the decision makers do sit, who can give you that money, who can give you that advertisement. Right? So that could be one reason for this shift of media, the major center of media. It gravitated towards Bhubaneswar. Now, what is the future of Cuttack? Is it doomed? I see a redeeming feature in internet. I see a redeeming feature and a silver lining in the cloud in OTT, in internet, in mobile, because of 3 factors. It doesn't require large amount of money. Mojo requires fraction, Mojo is mobile journalism, fraction of money that television requires. OTT requires fraction of money unless you are mounting a very grand scale web series. It requires fraction of the amount to be invested. But what it requires more is gray matter. So individuals with ideas, individuals with expertise, individuals with creativity can make a load of difference in the present and future media technology, media ecosphere. There lies the hope of Cuttack. Because Cuttack is synonymous with creativity. And creativity is the king in the present media scenario, present and future media ecosphere. Thank you so very much.
Please unshare the screen.
Yeah, I'll do that. Is there anything? This is the Tulsipur. That's it.
Yes.
Now, Charudat Babu has a question.
Let me mute him. Unmute him.
Please.
Yes, please ask.
Thank you so much. It was.
Can you open your video, Charu sir, so that we can see you? Yes, please go ahead. Please go ahead with your question, sir, Charu sir. Anybody having questions, please raise your hand. I will ask you to unmute.
I can see Om Prakash Babu. I can see Haraprasanna Das, Dr. Haraprasanna Das. I can see them. Others I can't see.
Now, sorry. Who wants to ask a question, please raise your hand. So that, okay, then let me do one thing. Let me ask. Now anyone can unmute and ask question. Okay, Deepak, you.
Yeah, I think there is some problem with Charudat. He was on the verge of asking the question, but he is not available right now. Some net issues or something, I think. He may come back. Let's wait for him. Without waiting for him, rather, I will request others to ask questions if they have any. Please. Okay. It seems no one has any questions. It was very crystal clear. The presentation was crystal clear.
I'll take it that way.
Yeah, we should. Yeah. So no questions. I think I will ask you a question, Mrinal,
please.
Because you talked about the future.
What is a Khati if there are no other opinions?
Yes, because you said that Cuttack can again redeem itself to a certain extent. How to start it to just talk about it? Yes, creativity, OTT, and all those things you shared. You have already said that, but how to go about it in a concrete manner? Suppose Cuttack Heritage Walk, to be specific, suppose it wants to do something in that respect, what it should do?
It can create videos of areas in a way that people haven't figured out, haven't seen, right?
Okay.
And thereby probably it can make Cuttack so very attractive that people will actually go to Cuttack to see that race. I'll give you an example.
Yes, please.
We were taken to Ireland, Northern Ireland. And Deepak Bhai, you know, so do others participants, that England and Northern Ireland or Ireland, they were at loggerhead for quite a long period of time.
Almost
And
centuries.
there were agitation, there were bombings, there were so many things, right? What they have done, and they took us to show that there were graffitis, anti-England graffiti, anti-government graffiti, right? And this graffitis now is a kind of a walk. They take you through all those graffitis. They have kept them intact. They take you to through all those and they charge you money. But of course, you have to give the British people to sell anything. But this is what this is one thing that they have done.
Yes.
They have kept a hotel which was bombed, right? At least those 3, 4, 5 rooms which were bombed very
Badly.
They have kept it that way so that they can show it and tell them the story. There will be one person who will take them around, right, and tell them the story, right? And you I mean, it's not free. I mean, it's a walk and you have to pay. This is one. Second, in Cardiff, there were several forts. They have kept those forts in a good condition. They have maintained them. And they organize regular tours. Every day, they organize about 10 tours of half an hour each, with 15-20 minutes right break, half an hour each. I mean, look at the scale that they are operating. There are so many visitors to those forts that they organize about 10 such visit in a fort, and there are a number of forts over there, like we have in our country as well. So this could be another thing. Food is promoted that way. In say places like Bangkok, in say places like other Eastern countries as well. So the point that I am trying to make is that if we can showcase it properly, it has 2 aspects. One is preservation, because nobody would like to go to a place where people are spitting, people are littering. Nobody would like to go to those places. But if there are places which is slightly maintained, and there will be some people who can make them understand that Baba, this is the historical significance of this place. So I guess this will help Cuttack to establish itself as a city of 1,000 years. This will also help somebody to earn some money, which can make this as a perpetual kind of an endeavor. Because with passion, you will be doing, say, a week, 1 month. But if you are not getting any return, you are not going to do it for a very long time.
Right.
So, and for doing this, media can play a very role. And here, why I am telling and I'm hopeful about the present technology, one person can make it. Earlier, you probably would need 5-10 people to do
many
it.
people,
And a lot of investment.
Yeah.
Here, one person with one mobile phone can do it.
Yes.
So that's the point I'm trying to make.
Thank you. Thank you.
Say for example, another example. Say for example, the silverware that Cuttack is famous for, filigree work that Cuttack is famous for. It's expensive, right? Workers do it. Workers do not get that kind of remuneration, and it's not marketed properly, and therefore the filigree work is going down the hill. Now, if some workers get together, make some good thing, promote it on Facebook, like they do a Facebook page every day, live page, and they sell it. Like they are doing with Banarasi sari in Banaras, like they are doing with Katha stitch saris in Bengal, and to a limited scale, Sambalpuri saris from Bargarh, individuals are selling through Facebook page. Directly you pay them and you get directly the
From them.
delivery. Right. This could be done.
Yes. About filigree especially, I think we can do
This could
something.
be done.
Yes. We can promote it.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you. Chardat is here. So Chardat, please ask your question.
Yes, I'm really sorry
No, it's
because
all
of the
right.
network issue. So specifically, a couple of thoughts, not exactly questions. One was that we always had editors and we always had proprietors slash activists slash nationalists who thought that they should tell or communicate, disseminate to people. That's why they opened the papers. But over the years, over the decades, your thoughts on how that helped in bringing about more journalistic approach or more journalists, more youngsters interested in journalism in Orissa? How did that evolve? First question. And second question is, now that we are talking about the ease in access and the ease in also making news and making writing and all of that content management, the other issue that we are facing now is the challenge now is that many of these youngsters are gradually getting away from the ground realities. So the mix between civil society organizations working at the ground and reporting the ground realities is getting a little difficult. So there is a gap there. What are your thoughts on these two?
The first pertains to professionalism or professionalization of journalism or making journalism a profession. Now, Charudata Babu, profession has three constructs. Any vocation can be a profession if it has these three constructs. One, specialized knowledge. Second, he or she is able to make a livelihood. That precisely means it has to be remunerative. Somebody can live, make it a livelihood issue. And third is, it has to do something good for the society. These are the three basic constructs of any vocation to be made into profession. The problem with journalism is two in India. A, money part. Journalists are the lowest paid profession. Worldwide, the situation is the same. They are the lowest paid, right? In Odisha, the situation is even worse. So in this situation, who do you think will come to journalism? Two types of people. One, who have a fire in the belly. They want to do something for the society. Therefore, they will be joining journalism. The second will be, they have no other way, no other way that they can make their livelihood. Journalism is a way to make some livelihood by doing some hunky-dory thing. Here comes the first part, the education part. In India, anybody or their uncle and auntie can be a journalist. Anybody. I'm not going to elaborate on this. You know from your experience. If you look at around you, you'll find that. So there is no benchmarking. When there is no benchmarking and the remuneration is abysmally low, right? That is just saying, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. And we are getting more monkeys than people who have a fire in the belly. And that's the problem with journalism in general in India, more so with Odisha. Let me be very brutally frank. What is the way out? A, have a benchmark. Different countries do have their own benchmarking system, right? Either they should have some qualification in journalism, or they should be part of an organization so that there could be some accountability, like they do have in Brazil, like they do have in other places as well. They have to be member of one association or the other to be journalists, working as journalists, right? First is benchmarking. Second is education. And third is their pay and their honorarium, whatever you say. The law that we had, and it's a very interesting point, those of you who do not know about this, may be very interesting, very brutally interesting, tragically interesting for you, that journalism is probably the only profession for which there is a particular law, Working Journalists Act. And ironically, this law is there only to be sidelined by the proprietors, because there are no permanent employees these days. All of them are, almost 90% of them, 95% of them are employed, engaged on contract, 2 years contract, 1 year contract, stringer, this, that. In earlier times, they used to have an association which used to have some power, some say. Now the associations have lost their power because of this. There are no permanent employees. So the proprietors, they do have a freeway. They can hire and fire. Okay. This is the situation. Now coming back to what could be done. A, benchmarking. Who can do this? The Journalists Association can do this. Press Council of India can do this. It could be done. Second is education. And third is pay. If these three things are taken care of, then we are going to get good journalists. Otherwise, this gap which you are talking about will be there. I'll end with another point. Another point is the difference, growing difference between the want and need. Middle class people who are the major consumers, I hate to use this word consumer, but then here I'm constrained to use that. Major consumers, most of them, they do not like to associate with the real felt problems of the marginalized. This also may sound very brutal, but this is the fact, right? They want something else. And journalism, the media has become a marketplace where you get what you want, not what you need. And that is what's happening. You want Doi Vada Aludam, you will get umpteen number of Doi Vada Aludam around. Nobody will force you to get Chena. As simple as that. So the want focus is increasing, and this will increase with the so-called development and so-called, I shouldn't say so-called, this will increase with more capitalism moving into our ecosphere. Unless the consumers of media contents, they become aware, and unless they connect to the ground reality, unless they feel for what's happening out there, and I have something to do with that, I have a responsibility, things are only going to be worse.
Thank you. Thank you.
But change can happen. And the silver lining, as I have already told you, I see is in technology, is in individuals' access to technology. Now, individual has more power at his or her disposal to be heard at a global scale. Earlier, it was not the case. Now, this is the case. That's the silver lining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chatterjee, I want to just add some of my thoughts.
Please, please, sir.
I somehow do not agree 100% with the point that you raised, that the pecuniary,
Considerations.
compensation that the poor reporters get is probably the main cause of getting into the trap of some kind of journalism. It's not a true journalism that you have studied so much. But I think throughout the world, including India in general and Odisha in particular, it is to do with the politics of the time. The proprietor of any media agency, if he is to answer to the political system, then the poor reporters, irrespective of their perks that they're receiving, will have to obey the command of their proprietor. So in that respect, it is the politics which is responsible for these journalists to give their best, rather being swayed away with the nasty politics that is going on in our society.
Yes, I mean, this is a situation where the journalist finds himself in a helpless situation.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, at one side, he is not getting good salary.
Remuneration.
On the other side, his job is not sure that tomorrow morning whether the job is there or not.
Mr. Chatterjee, my question is, even if he will get 2 lakhs per annum, or sorry, per year, per month, if his master will not say to print a good news, that is just, he has.
That's another area. That's perfectly, I can understand that also. But having worked as a journalist for 15 years, I can tell you from experience, more often than not, the owners are not really bothered about what goes and what doesn't, unless it directly impacts their political stance or their political future. So a journalist, if he wants to work, he has a very great play field in which he can actually work and then make a difference. With my experience, I can tell you, and I had worked in Sambad, I had worked in Pragatibadi for some time, and I had worked as freelancer as well. So I have never been, I was edition in charge of Sambad in Baleshwar. Baleshwar is a politically very volatile. I have never been asked to write or not write anything. This I can tell with all sincerity now, because I do not have any stake now. So this has happened. But yes, if it directly what impacts the owner's political future, or he has a stake which is directly impacted, then probably he or she will make you not write that. Otherwise, there are ample areas where somebody can actually write. Nobody prevents a journalist from going out there and write about the plight of, say, somebody out there toiling hard, not getting their remuneration, doing some exceptional work, not getting recognition. Nobody has stopped.
Yeah.
That is the, I mean, that's what I have felt and experienced. Thank you.
It has been, a session where we got what we need in public service broadcasting language. This has been a beautiful session of infotainment, information presented in a very palatable manner, which we always try. But Mrinal has succeeded like anything. And this has been a wonderful session. I had promised my future, or you can say prospective participants, but today the participation was not very encouraging, I must say. We'll ensure that the next time around it doesn't happen, and I'm sure the people who are not with us right now will be watching it on YouTube and make up for what they have lost by not joining this session, hopefully. And now I'd like to request my friend, our founder member and well-known musician of our state, Sri Om Prakash Mahanti, to propose a formal vote of thanks for Dr. Chatterjee. Meteor, please unmute.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Mrinalda, it was a wonderful session, So I had a lot of questions, but I never wanted to interfere in between because I just wanted to know your mind. What is your perspective? So that is a moral duty as a sober man in the society. But I will just make few points. It's in changing scenario, many things keeps on changing. So it is up to be. So we'll have to accept it. And the role of media was different in few years back. Now it is different. And I hope it will be changing for a good thing. And this, kind of remuneration you have talked about, I had a bit of experience because I was also working in the media, not All India Radio. Then I joined All India Radio as a musician. So I had very little role to play. But whatever, assignments given by my bosses like Deepak sir, so I have discharged all with sincerity, and it's a wonderful session. From the organization, I want to say first of all, the speaker who enlightened us in a very elaborate manner, and he's an experienced man. I have got a personal relationship with him, and he listens to my music. Thank you so much, Dada. Thank you, everyone, those who have joined and those who have missed this session. It's a very crucial, it's a very thought-provoking things because many things, and that the speaker like Mrinalda is very eloquent speaker, and we all have enjoyed. And I want to thank everyone, each and everyone, those who have joined and those who have missed. They have missed a lot. They can watch it later on in YouTube. Thank you, Deepak sir. Thank you, Mrinalda. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, then. Thank you. We are closing.